So, hello and welcome to the Beyond the Game podcast with me, Matthew O'Dell. On today's episode, we have Zainab Alema. Zainab is a rugby player who is nicknamed the bulldozer for her explosive power on the pitch, and off the pitch is using her platform to break down cultural barriers and societal norms. Last year, she became the first player to wear a hijab and score in a Premiership women's rugby game, and has previously been named Sunday Times Grassroots Sportswoman of the Year and Woman of the Future in 2022. Zainab, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Matthew. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to talk to you today, and I'm happy to be on board.
Amazing. So the first question that I ask all of my podcast guests is what the power of sport means to them and how they would describe it.
For me personally, I'll say it's legacy, and that might seem like a weird thing to say, but the reason why I feel like it's legacy is because for me, in my personal journey, I feel like sport has given me a chance to leave a legacy. And leaving a legacy is something that's really important to me because it makes sense to lead this world, but also leave something behind for others. So the sport, the vehicle for me to leave that legacy. So through sport, that's where I get to leave my legacy, and I'm really happy about that.
Yeah, and before we dive into your story, because it is a great story, I must admit, I'd love to just hear a little bit about how you actually got into rugby.
Sure. So I got into rugby actually at secondary school. So my PE teacher was a rugby fanatic, and she used to coach, and she just brought some rugby balls in one session. I was like, right, girls, today's lesson in PE, we're going to be doing rugby. And I just remember being the only one out of my peers being like absolutely buzzing because we didn't do rugby at school. The girls, we did rounders, netball, tennis, but rugby wasn't on the curriculum. So for her to bring that in, for me, I was just so excited. But I remember my peers at the time were just not for it. They're like, Miss, can we do something else? I don't want to get on the floor. I don't want to get dirty. But I was like, buzzing, let's go, Miss. And I remember touching the ball. I was 14 years old at the time. Touching the ball, running through people. And I just had that moment. I just thought, where has this sport been all my life, you know? And that was the beginning of my love for rugby. So 14-year-old Zainab at secondary school in a PE lesson.
So from having your first experience of playing rugby at school, what was the journey then onwards?
So actually, we played it for that term, I believe. And then I didn't really do much with it. It was just, we did that term and that was it. But I picked it back up when I was 17 years old. I did A-level, and PE, physical education, was one of my A-levels. So I then had the opportunity to revisit my love for rugby. And my PE teacher, I remember at the time, she was an Irish lady, strong accent, but she was the most supportive teacher you could ask for. So she was like, sat me down and was like, Zainab, you need to do a physical component to your coursework. What sport do you want to do to accompany that? And I think back to Zainab, 14-year-old Zainab, who was running through people, loving rugby. And I was like, Miss, do you know what? I think I want to do rugby. And rugby wasn't part of the curriculum, but so she went out of her way. She went to the head teacher and said, look, we've got a student doing A-levels. We need to get into rugby club as part of our course. And I remember the head teacher at the time basically wrote a letter, paid for funding for my 1 year season at Ealing Childfinders under 18. And then the PE teacher actually drove me to my first training session in a white Nissan Micra. When I look back, I think she went out of her way because she could have easily said, look, Zainab, we don't do rugby at school. Why don't you do football? Why don't you do rounders, for example? But she went out of her way, and I always think fondly of her when I look back at my journey. Because without them introducing me to rugby, I don't think I would be where I am today.
Especially when you look at sports players in general, there's always that one person that seems to kind of have been a coincidental influence at the time as well, because it's only really very recently that women's rugby has really been gaining kind of notoriety and airtime as well on TV. So I guess something that you would have otherwise not been exposed to.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, my journey it's been definitely not easy, but I think I'm grateful for all those little moments, like you said, that have just come together and built my journey. After school, I joined my first club, Ealing Childfinders under 18s. I went on to play at University of Hertfordshire and then decided whether or not I wanted to continue after getting my degree in nursing, and I did in the end, and I ended up going to Millwall, Barnes, and Richmond. and then Leicester Tigers. So it's been a journey. When I look back at it, but I look back at it with fond memories.
If you look at how far you've come, it's a very long way. You're from a Muslim background. What was the reaction within your community when you were starting to play rugby, and how did people react to that?
I'll start from my immediate family, so my parents, for example. When I told my mum and dad that I wanted to play rugby, my mum, I think, classic mum, oh, I don't want to get injured, I don't want to break anything. She was more worried about on that front. My dad, on the other hand, he was like, why rugby? Rugby is a man's sport. Rugby is an elitist sport. He just couldn't understand why his Muslim daughter wants to play rugby. But fair enough. Like he never, I don't think he even knew that like there was a women's rugby team and that women play professional rugby. I don't think he even knew that. But he did suggest that I play tennis. And I thought, and
Slightly
I think,
different.
I mean, it's so different. Some people will say it's an elitist sport, but when I look back, he probably was thinking about representation and how, Serena Williams, being a black woman in tennis, absolutely smashing things and on that front. So maybe he thought, I could see you more being a tennis player than a rugby player because he never knew of any black women that played rugby. So I think, looking back, I could kind of understand what he was trying to say. Maybe just because of the landscape of rugby, it wasn't there. Representation was not there, so it was hard for him to see. I guess in the wider community, like Ghanaian Muslim community, they've been supportive, like 100%. Like, they always saying that they're proud of me. They're always sharing like what I'm doing. So no, it's really nice to know that my community is behind me. You're obviously going to get people not understand why you're doing why you're playing rugby, why you want to play rugby. But I tend to focus on the positives and not the people who have negative feelings towards me playing rugby.
Yeah, agreed. And I think one of the really important topics that you touched on there is all about representation and having someone to look up to. And I guess you are being that person for younger girls looking up. But was there anyone that you looked up to in the rugby world that inspired you to?
Yeah, I think my girl Fonzie. I always talk about her in interviews. She's probably sick of me talking about her. She absolute inspiration to me. Actually, when I found out about her, I was in that dilemma of whether or not, at the crossroads, should I continue rugby, should I not? And then, like, just hearing her story and seeing her on TV, I think she was playing for Red Roses at the time, it really made me see, like, oh my goodness, like, there's a black woman playing for the national team. And I thought, if she can play rugby at such an elite level, why can't I play rugby at even grassroots level? So she was that representation that I needed to see for me to believe that I belonged in rugby or that I could have a space in rugby. I actually got a chance to meet her a couple of years ago during COVID, and I was involved in like a campaign for the Six Nations, and I managed to meet her, and I read her poem. It was a poem to my younger self, and it featured her in it because she's heavily featured in my story and why I stayed. And I just remember seeing her the first time. I was like, oh my god, like the person who I've looked up to and helped me gain that sense of belonging is literally standing right in front of me. But now we're actually really good mates. We talk quite regularly, and she's almost kind of become my mentor now. And I just think it's mind blowing how somebody you kind of thought was your hero in a sense, and then now you're being able to like talk to them on a level. Yeah, it's a beautiful feeling to know that you can meet your heroes. What I feel there's a saying that says you shouldn't meet your heroes, but I've always said if Maggie is your hero, then 100% you should meet her if you get the chance.
Amazing. And has she ever kind of given you any pearls of wisdom that you use or you stick by?
Yeah, she's just always been such a supportive person. Tells me if I need anything, I can sort of reach out to her, and she's happy to sort of help me on my journey. To be fair, and I know she said that she's taking one of my quotes or one of the quotes. I guess I can't really claim it, but there's something that I always say: if you can't see it, then be it, rather than if you can't see it, you can't be it. And when I met her, I quoted that to her. She's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna nick that one." So maybe, yeah, it was I guess a bit of a gift from me to her.
It's a reciprocal relationship, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
No, that's amazing to hear that you finally got the opportunity to meet her and that you're still close and talking. Have you ever had any, obviously you're very present on social media about your story. Do you often find there's people within your community or young black girls that reach out and see you as a role model?
Yes, like I think social media has a way of like connecting strangers and people from around the world. And I found that especially starting my Road to Red Roses account, I've had many messages of people, young girls, boys, like everyone just messaging me, like coming almost like being part of my journey. And it's so inspirational for me to hear that I inspire them or to hear that I've had an impact in their lives. Like it's such a amazing feeling, and I feel like it's part of that legacy, right? That I told you that I wanna leave, and having comments like that and people reaching out for advice or like just telling me how they feel and how happy they are about me playing rugby and my journey. It just means the world. And yeah, I just like to. I always say if I can help one person, then I'm happy. So when I get multiple people message me, I'm like, it makes you feel like you must be doing something right, you know?
Yeah, 100%. You mentioned that you played rugby at university. What was that like? Obviously, we know alcohol is highly integrated into university sports. Being a Muslim and not drinking, what was that relationship like?
It was very difficult in the beginning. I feel like when I went to university, it was an eye opener to me because up until then, I was obviously playing under 18s, and you know we didn't drink at under 18, so it was I was almost oblivious to the fact that alcohol was so big. But when I came to university, you can imagine like a young Muslim girl going to university, like if you separate it a little bit, you think about uni and how go out to the club, go out drinking, that environment, and then you add the rugby culture on top of that. It was just like, whoa, like I was just thinking it was such an eye opener. But one thing that I did that I felt like really helped me is that I always said I wanted to make sure I had a community of people around me when I was at uni to help me feel grounded or help me to feel like, and I joined the Islamic Society at university. And it was just that bit that I needed to feel like no matter where I was on campus, I still had like my people that, share the same faith with me. And if I wanted advice or etc., I can go to them. So that helped massively. Other things that I feel like was difficult when I was at uni was the fact that, I wore hijab and I wore base layers under my kit to play rugby. And I knew that I was like I stood out, especially when it's warm weather. You stick out because you're thinking, why are you wearing so many layers in such warm weather? So I was really conscious that I looked different on the pitch, but I think for me it drove me to play well because I thought, oh, if I do a mistake, people are gonna like notice me like more. But if I play well, yes, they'll still notice me, but in a positive way. So it used to really push me to like play well and play the best I can, which was, I guess, beneficial. Um, and then, yeah, I think it just really played in my mind that I was different because I didn't attend socials because of the drinking culture. So I was in some way I felt isolated. But one thing my teammates never did is made me feel isolated. Like they were always inviting me, even though I never attended. And I think I had some of my best and fondest memories of rugby at university. I feel like my love for rugby really grew at university, despite the challenges that I faced and being different from my teammates and my peers.
The thing that I was curious about is, do you wear like a special sports hijab when you play, or is it different?
Yeah, so it's different from like my older, like the one that I'm wearing now. It's a chiffon hijab. I wouldn't wear this to play rugby or to play sports. So the one I wear, it's a sports, specifically sports hijab. So it's for sports. So I'll say the difference is like, I know, lightweight. The feel of it is lightweight. It's breathable material. So it helps to just dry the sweat quite quickly. So yeah, I really enjoy playing a sports hijab. I feel like its comfortability is so important to me, especially like rugby being such a physical sport. I feel like you've got to do your best to feel comfortable when you're playing such a physical sport, and the sporty job has helps me massively. And on top of that, I actually wear a scrum cap. So the scrum cap, I wear it because I want it to. I don't want my sports job to come off. So that's the main reason why I wear it. But because I play loose head prop and I'm a front row, people don't really necessarily know because it's very common to have a front rower wearing a scrum cap, but I purely wear it to keep my headscarf on because there'd been a time when my headscarf came off during a game and I was absolutely mortified. I was having a bad hair day. It was very embarrassing. So I had to think of a way and I did some research and I thought, invest in a sports job, invest in the scrum cap. And since then, I haven't had any mishaps. I think I always say, wherever there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah, no, I love it. I think that's a that's a really good idea that I would never have even crossed my mind. If there were any young girls like you that they're covering up and wearing thermals and they're wearing the sports hijab and they're perhaps, struggling because they think they look different, what sort of advice would you give to them?
Yeah, I think for me, for anyone that's struggling with, wearing the sports, wearing their hijab or like dressing modestly, I'll say just be you, be authentically yourself. I think there's power in being different. Like no two people are the same. Even twins, they have their differences, but embrace that and ride with it. And I feel like there's no shame in practicing your faith. And yes, there's sometimes you might feel a bit isolated, you might feel like you're on your own, but the right people, you will draw out the right people and the people will like you for who you are and what you stand for. So I think be proud of your faith and, yes, you might wear extra layers, but you're just the same as the person. Continue with whatever it is that you love doing, whether it's sports or not. I think just be proud of yourself. Yeah.
No, I love that. I think there's two really powerful messages there as like embrace being different, but also about finding your team and finding the people that, when you're feeling a little bit down or you need a little bit of reassurance or you need a little bit of guidance, that you've got that support network underneath that. I recently read a book and I'd love to quote you who the author is, but I can't remember it. And they talk about that you almost need to build your five-a-side friendship group where you have your five players, you have someone that you go to when you're feeling down, you have someone that you go to when you need a pep talk, have someone that you need to when you just want a hug. I think it's a really nice way of visualizing those people in your network and who you would lean on at those times.
That's a good one. I feel like I've heard this before, but again, I don't know the book or the author, but yes, it's quite nice to think of your friends and people like that.
One thing I wanted to touch on was your nickname, which is the bulldozer. I just wondered, how does that reflect your style of rugby and kind of also just the way that you approach life?
I think because I'm a rugby player, it makes sense for me to also draw parallels from being on pitch bulldozer. But the bulldozer is basically a metaphor for who I am and what I'm trying to do within a rugby space. My identity being a black Muslim woman within rugby, smashing stereotypes, breaking down barriers. But I always say it's not just about breaking down things and smashing things. It's also about building up and paving the way. Because when you think about a bulldozer, yes, it breaks things down, but why is it doing that? Because there's going to be foundations and something built that's, I guess, a better version of the previous thing. So that's essentially like me in a nutshell. And I always say it's 3 ingredients to become the bulldozer, and anyone can. And you've got to be bold. That's number 1. You've got to be brave. But the most important ingredient, I always say, and you cannot be a bulldozer without this ingredient, is you've got to be yourself. And I think, because nobody can do you better than you. And if you can be yourself and be bold and be brave, then essentially you are a bulldozer.
I love that. A very simple metaphor, but such an effective one as well. I was looking at a quote the other day and it was, can you remember who you were before they told you who to be? And I think that really speaks true to what you were just saying about be authentic to yourself. Don't let others influence you. As you say, be true to yourself and you'll never be angry with your actions.
Yeah, that's nice. Nice.
And there's also one thing which I saw online, which I must ask of the bulldozer, but is it true that you did county trials 8 weeks postpartum?
Yes, Matthew, yeah, it did. And sometimes I sit and think, oh my God, I was definitely crazy. But yeah, that's true. Very true story, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, mind blowing. Obviously, a lot of mental fortitude.
Yeah, I was just saying, yeah, it's true. And I think when I think back at it, it probably wasn't the best decision. Yeah, but I feel like it needed to happen for me to know where I was at with my body and with rugby. And I think it was a real eye opener. But I look back at it with like disbelief, but also like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. But also like proud because there's people who, had who have met me on my journey and seen the Zainab that walked into County Trials, the 8-week-old, and then seen the Zainab that's, run onto the pitch for Leicester Tigers. I think it's been a great thing for them to see. And like, I've had messages from people like, I'm so proud of you, people who are on the county team or were at the trials the time that I initially come. So it's nice to sort of progress with people and for people to see that progression.
You made the transition to leave your job as a nurse and pursue rugby full time.
Yeah, it was about 2021, so it's been 4 years now. Just about 4 years, yeah. Can't
And
believe it.
how has that journey been?
Difficult, scary, rewarding. Like, I could throw so many words at you, but it really made me realize that sometimes you've got to just take risks. Going at something you love or you want with just everything, or jumping head first, because yes, it will seem scary at that time, but once you do it, you just don't know what's on the other side, and you've got to see, And I guess if you don't like what's on the other side, you could probably go back to what you was doing before, but you don't know until you try. And it's taught me that you've got to just go for your goals and your dreams. And even if you aim for the moon, you might capture the stars. You aim really high, but even if you don't get to where you've aimed, you're still going to be better than where you were before. And I've met so many incredible people on my journey so far. And I think if it wasn't for me making the decision to jump at rugby and grab it with two hands, there's no way I would have these experiences. Like, for example, go to the World Cup 2023, presenting the match ball, for example, even getting to Leicester Tigers. There's so many different experiences that I've had over the years, and I feel like I probably wouldn't have been able to experience those if I didn't take the risk to focus on rugby. So I'm really grateful that I'm able to have these experiences, but part of myself for not like chickening out and being like, you know what, nah, let me just stay doing nursing. Don't get me wrong, I actually really loved nursing, but I think it was time to try something else just to see how it went.
Yeah, I think I saw a quote the other day which quite accurately describes what you're saying about that feeling of being scary and afraid to jump in. But it was by Layla Hormozy, and she says that fear is a mile wide but an inch deep. Until you take that first step, you never really know how you're going to react or how big the challenge really is. And
Yeah.
I think there's really something about leaning into that.
Mm-hmm.
And also as well that I think there's this whole concept and theory that you always have regrets in your life, so you might as well choose the regrets that you're happy with. And I think this ladders back to what you were saying earlier about being authentic to yourself. If you're being authentic to yourself and your decisions are aligned with your values, then really can you go too far wrong with those regrets that you're
Yeah,
choosing?
yeah, that's spot on. I think you mentioned about aligning values. That's so important to me. And I think, like you said, once you do that, there's not many things that you regret if they line up with your values and what you stand for. I totally agree.
Yeah, and obviously you've gone on this journey of leaving your full-time job, and but you've also gone about it on Instagram. You're posting all the time, you're out there in front of people, which I think is also such an important part of what you're doing, because we talked about it earlier and you referred to it when you're being a bulldozer. You can bulldoze things, but you need to be creating something as well and giving other people a leg up. And I think what you're doing and the platform that you're creating is yeah, as you say, doing just that. For those that don't know, what is your road to, sorry, I'm going to get it wrong, Road to Roses?
Road to
Is that
Red Roses.
Road to Red? What is your Road to Red Roses account, and what's that journey about?
Yeah. So when I decided to leave nursing, my initial goal or my goal was that I wanted to focus on rugby, but it only occurred to me like I'd say maybe a couple of months later that I actually wanted to try and achieve the dream of becoming the first Muslim woman to play for England. I remember being so scared, like to tell people. I was like, oh my God, what are people going to think? So I just put out a few feelers and I asked one of my friends to create an illustration for me. And I thought, let me see. it actually wasn't meant to be me initially. I just thought I wanted to see someone who was a Muslim woman playing for England. It wasn't initially my dream, and I put it out there, and I got a lot of positive feedback. And then I thought, oh my god, like if I'm gonna wait for this opportunity to happen, I may not see it in my lifetime. I'm already playing rugby. I already love the sport. Why don't I just try and see how far I get? Do you get what I mean? So that's where the Road to Red Roses started. And I thought, okay, I want to be accountable. I want people to come in on the journey with me. Let me create an Instagram account where people can follow the journey, keep up to date with things I'm doing. And yeah, that's how it was born. And, since 2021, I've been working at that goal, achieved different milestones along the way, like playing for county, etc. Playing for Leicester Tigers in the Premiership was the latest and the biggest milestone so far. And it's just trying to push myself to see how far I can get in achieving this goal. And I've come to realize that the journey is so powerful, and it's so like the journey is the goal almost. Like the experiences you experience, the people you can inspire, those are all leading up to all part of the journey, but that leads up to the dream. I think I've come to a stage where I'm really soaking up all the little milestones. Before, I just wanted the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, and I still obviously do want to achieve my goal. But I'm now at a space where I'm actually able to enjoy my journey rather than be too hard on myself and appreciate that how far I've come. So yeah, I'm in a positive position right now with it.
Yeah, and so you just referred to it there, but last year you became the first woman to play in the Premiership rugby wearing hijab and also to score. What
Mm,
does that mean for your journey? And as you say, if you sit back and reflect on this
mm.
achievement, what would 14-year-old you think of this?
Oh, she would not believe it. 14-year-old Zainab would have no idea that she could ever achieve this. Like, 14 years in, I would be absolutely beside herself. Like, imagine, because when you put it like that, imagine me seeing at 14 years old seeing someone like me doing what I'm doing. I would be like her number one fan, honestly. So it does. When I reflect, it's such. I when I reflect in that aspect or in that way, it does really signify how huge my journey's been, and how important it could be with other girls, Muslim girls especially, but in general other people. How inspiring that must be. But I don't get. I don't think I get time to really sit and think about it like that. But when you ask me that question, it really does put things into perspective. And obviously, I'm really grateful for the position that I'm in. But yeah, 14-year-old Zainab would be like, no way, I can't believe it. 100%.
Yeah, no, it must have been such a yeah, as you say, such a moment when you're putting that ball down over the line and stepping up to celebrate with the crowd.
I always forget. Do you know what? I don't actually, not that I forget it, but I always say, oh, I was the first hijabi Muslim to play in the Premiership. But I always forget to mention the try bit until people remind me about you scored a try. So I'm like, yeah, I did, didn't I?
That was me.
Yeah, so I always have to get reminded of that because recently someone reminded me, "And you scored a try?" I did, didn't I? I did. But I think it was so surreal that I probably was like, I don't know, maybe out of body experience that my brain probably has it still registered now. I don't know. But yeah, it was incredible because I remember before going to Kingsholm Stadium, sitting in my hotel this morning before the game, and I thought, oh my god, like this is it, and my dream, of becoming a Premiership player is going to happen in a couple of hours. And I mean, I had a fleeting thought, oh, imagine if I was able to score a try in my debut, that would be immense. But it was very fleeting. I didn't dwell on it too much. But when the opportunity arose, I was like, oh my goodness, it actually happened.
How does the bulldozer prepare for a game? How does she deal with nerves? Is there any particular tips and tricks?
Nerves. I think so. If I think back to my debut, to be honest with you, I wasn't nervous because I just thought whatever happens, I'm on the pitch now. I've come all this way. There's no way nerves is gonna do anything to me right now. Like I've worked and built up to this moment. But I guess on other days, I can get nervous sometimes. Going into really important games. But I think I just try and challenge it to remind myself like nerves are good. Like, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It means that I care about what I'm doing. It means that, for me, I feel like if I make the first couple of minutes, if I'm sort of submit myself into the game, then I'm okay. Like the first hit, for example, the first big carry. If I can get that under my belt early doors, that kills any sort of nerves because it almost grounds me and allows me to like think that okay, I'm in the game, I'm in the zone right now, and then everything else just takes care of itself. So I think for me, if I'm feeling slightly nervous for a game or anything like that, I have to make sure I get stuck in, like hunt for that first tackle and hunt for that first ball carry, and then that's it. I'm all right after that.
Yeah, no, that's such a good example, I think, of how to combat nerves. I spoke with a mental performance coach, and she was often talks about how pressure and nerves are almost like a privilege and opportunity for excitement. Like the fact that you're nervous means that you care. And it's
Absolutely,
also a great thing to feel those feelings because without fear or excitement or happiness, the world's quite a dull place. So it's all about, yeah, embracing that opportunity, I guess.
agreed. Yeah,
Perfect. Sorry, I'm just going to take a second to just flick through the questions I've got
yeah,
here because I think we're most of the way there now.
yeah,
Feel free to take a drink or
yeah. I
anything
just
if you want. I know it's always a tough one. Um, cool. I think we've actually done a lot of these. Perfect. So I'm going to move on to the concluding questions, and then there's just a few little bits that I just wanted to ask you, which were in the brief, just around like a brief intro on yourself, and then just maybe like 5 minutes just about Ramadan, as it's quite topical and something that also is quite interesting to speak to people about.
yeah,
Don't get
sure.
a chance very often, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, sure.
Perfect. So we're now onto the section of the podcast where we ask all of our guests the same question. And the first question is, who is someone that inspires you?
I'm gonna say my girl Fonty. She was an inspiration to me. I think just like representation again, seeing a black woman playing rugby at elite level, it made me feel a sense of belonging. Yeah, I'll definitely say she's definitely one of my inspirations.
And what is a quote that you live by?
I would say be you. It's very short and simple, but be you. I think there's no two ways about it. You've got to be yourself, be authentic. And if you allow yourself to be you, no matter what situation you find yourself in, if you're yourself, you can get by. So know yourself and then be yourself.
And what is your definition of success?
For me, it's being able to use your passion to help other people or your talents to help other people. I think that's success.
And final one is an interesting one, but what's next for you? What's this season holding? What are you gearing up to? What's in the pipeline?
I think just building on the legacy is always going to be like the next thing for me. No matter what I do next, I think it's always about building the blocks to that overall legacy. Things come, things go, but as long as I'm still building towards that end goal, I think that's the most important for me. But obviously staying fit, playing my rugby, keeping my skills up, and in good shape, and then seeing what other doors can open for me. But yeah, just building that legacy, I think it would just always be my next step.
Amazing. And if people want to find you on social media, where can they find you?
I'm on pretty much all the platforms. Um I haven't succumbed to threads yet.
Me and you both.
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram, the Alema on Instagram. I'm on X, Alema Zainab. I'm on LinkedIn, Zainab Alema. I'm on Facebook even. TikTok, that's all my jolly side. So if you want to have a laugh, you can follow me on TikTok. So yeah, I'm on generally quite a lot of social media platforms. But Instagram is my go-to, the ZLE.
Lovely stuff. Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for
Yeah,
coming on
you're
the
welcome.
podcast. But yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure, and I can't wait to cringe at my voice listening back to this.
Me and you both. Me and you both. Cool. So I'll clip that one just there for the podcast. And then the next one is, could you just do like a 20 or 30-second intro just on who you are quickly, just so that it'll just be something that goes out on social media?
Yeah. So my name is Zainab Alema. I am also known as a bulldozer. I'm a rugby player. I'm the first hijabi woman to play in the Premiership. Made my debut for Leicester Tigers women in 2024, and it's and a massive achievement for me. I'm a mother of three as well, and former neonatal nurse, and that's me in a nutshell.
Amazing. Perfect. And then the next one is just a few quick questions on Ramadan. So for those that don't know, what is Ramadan and what does Ramadan mean to you?
So Ramadan is essentially a month in the Islamic calendar, and it's observed by Muslims worldwide. It's a month that is ideally, the essence of it is to draw closer to God and to have strengthen your relationship with God. So we fast from dusk to dawn, basically, or dawn to dusk. So I'm getting the wrong way. I'll say in English that I understand. So you fast from sunrise to sunset. That's across different countries is different time frames. So currently in the UK, I'd say start fasting about 5 a.m. in the morning, break fast about 6 p.m. in the evening. So it's quite, it's long hours, but the weather at the moment favors us because it's not too hot. It can be quite difficult in the summer months. But yeah, essentially it's to draw closer to God. We are fasting, but there's other forms of acts of worship that we do, obviously praying, fasting, like I obviously mentioned, giving our alms, so like charity work, is one of those key things that we encourage to do during this month. Reading our holy scriptures during this month as well. So although you're abstaining from food and drink during the daytime, it's also a way for you to channel and become more disciplined, because if you can conquer your daily tasks without having any food and drinking system, you can imagine what else you can achieve. Like, it's such a good way to build up discipline and to break habits that you probably do on a regular basis and when you're not fasting. And it's just a way to sort of to cleanse yourself spiritually. And I find when you are fasting, you're meant to abstain from obviously not just food and drink, but swearing, doing like unlawful acts. You're said to be more patient. You're meant to be more patient and more, I guess, easygoing with people, because it's very easy for you to be hot tempered when you're hungry. You know that sort of phrase where you're hangry, if that makes sense. But when you're fasting, you're encouraged to tame that sort of urge to get upset or to be angry at people, because the bigger picture is actually you want to get closer to God, and actually you can't be horrible to people and assume that you're close to God. It doesn't really work like that. So um I've waffled on a lot, but hopefully you've got the answer.
No. It's all good and really interesting to hear. So obviously, as you touched on there, a big part of Ramadan is fasting, and obviously that has definitely implications for athletes. But for clubs that are wanting to, try and accommodate Muslim athletes, do you have any tips or guidance on how they can best do that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first thing is to reach out to the fellow Muslims in your club, whether they're players or staff, and acknowledge that, it's the month of Ramadan, and say to them, we're here to help you if you do need help. I think that goes a long way, even just send them a message and be like, hey, if you need anything, just give us a shout. In terms of that, the athlete, during the time where they need to break fast, if training's going on that same time, allow them to step away and to break their fast. And then things like prayer spaces, like generally Muslims pray anyway, 5 times a day if you're practicing. But during Ramadan, we're sort of like, you almost are more disciplined to do the normal acts of worship anyway. So ideally, a prayer space would be fantastic at a club or a workplace. For example, it doesn't have to be like a whole new building. It could just be a corner, a quiet corner. It could just be a room. As long as it's clean, it's tidy, it's private, then you're good. And then actually allowing the athlete to go at their own pace, I think is really important, their own intensity, because obviously rugby training can be quite vigorous, can be quite strenuous, but allowing the athlete to lead you and be like, okay, I'll about to sit out for this drill because I'm feeling a bit maybe lightheaded, or I might do like 4 reps instead of 6, for example. just allowing them to go at their own pace. So you're not exerting too much pressure on them, too much force. In terms of game time, maybe having a reduced minutes. They might not they might not be able to withstand, full 80. Maybe think about 60, 50, maybe a half. So I think just allowing the athlete to make their own sensible decisions, but also being there as a support system if they need, I think is the best advice I give to like coaches and clubs.
Amazing.